By way of brief factual background, back on January 27th, 1979, three individuals drove to the then Great Scott supermarket in Farmington, where one of the armed robbers shot and executed a store clerk, Julius Schnoll, age 62 at the time. The case remained unsolved for approximately 29 years until Detective Frank Demers began to review cold homicide cases within the city of Farmington, this being one of those cases. Based upon the information, witness statements, and assistance from now Detective Dave Wertz and Gary Miller from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, and in conjunction with the information that the city of Farmington had and the investigation conducted by Detective Demers, we have issued a 2-count murder warrant against a William Hess and a Darrell Kastel for first-degree premeditated murder and count 2 felony murder, the predicate felony being the armed robbery. Both are currently in custody. I must applaud and commend Detective Demers, Wertz, and Miller for their efforts in bringing this case to resolution now 29 years later. Their efforts, in my opinion, were a perfect recipe of teamwork, diligence, and tenacity. As you can assume, cold cases are very difficult to resolve due to faded memories, unavailability of witnesses, and sometimes lost evidence. However, this case was blessed with a perfect combination of good detective work that collided with perseverance, and today netted in the issuance of warrants against these 2 individuals who will now face life incarceration. At this time, I will call upon Chief Nebus to make further comment, and then we'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon to members of the press. This is truly a shining example of law enforcement at its best in Oakland County. In our partnership, I'll take you back a couple of years ago. It was in 2006. Commander Frank Demers, over here to my left, came into my office and he said, "Hey Chief," he says, "You were around back in 1979. He says, "Do you remember an unsolved murder at the Great Scott supermarket?" And I told him I did. As a matter of fact, I had a very small, insignificant part in the case, but at that time I was a 5-year veteran of the Farmington Hills Police Department, was working undercover in surveillance, and we spent weeks watching supermarkets and different stores that were open all night in case these killers would come back. And what they did back on January 27, 1979, it was 4 o'clock in the morning when the two men charged came into the supermarket. They herded 2 of the working employees into a break room, then they herded the other 2 into the break room. And when our victim, Julius Schnoll, age 62, was unable to open the safe, they executed him, shot him in the head in front of the other horrified employees. Commander Demers, of course, I said yes when he said he'd open the case, and what he first thought was, he said, "Chief, maybe there's some scientific evidence, maybe some DNA or some APHIS fingerprints or something that didn't exist back then that might help solve the case." So in the months that followed, Commander Demers gathered some of the property and the files and the photos and the evidence and was retrieving everything. And when we started talking about the case, I could see as it was coming along that failure was not an option, that he was going to have success. I didn't want to tell you that, Frank, because I want to put extra pressure on you, but I knew the direction, and knowing Frank, the pit bull that he is, that he was going to get this case solved. You know, we reached out, realized we needed some additional resources to help us. We reached out to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department for help. Sheriff Bouchard always supports law enforcement in the county with whatever our needs are. And Sergeant Dave Wertz and Gary Miller, who were introduced already, were put on this case. And wasn't it ironic, as the prosecutor mentioned, that Sergeant Wertz, way back 30 years ago, was involved in this case and would be back to be part of it solving. The city of Farmington is very grateful. It's one of probably the 3 worst homicides ever in the history of the city. And it was the only one that had remained unsolved until this time.